So Darragh McElhinney, back-to-back indoor champion, Cathal. It was very composed and mature performance by him on Saturday. What was your big takeaway from it?
I would say my big takeaway was one, he put two, he had two races before this. Obviously, he'd one in Boston and one, or he'd two in Boston, one over 3K and one over 5K. And the 3K was good, not, I suppose, great for him because he faded the last 100 meters. But then in Boston, kind of similar thing happened, kind of what happened to him at the Europeans in Munich last year, where he was going for a big time, a big performance, but then he just blew up in the last lap in that race in Boston University. And I think that probably dented his confidence a little bit. And so coming back into this, I suppose it was all about, he'd run two poor last laps in those races in Boston. And I suppose it was literally the opposite in terms of he just sat on Nick Griggs, did the smart thing. And we know by now that Darragh has the best finishing speed in those Irish distance races and no one can live with him. And that's the way it was. And I think to just flip the narrative upside down. He went from, dying a death in two races over 3K and 5K in Boston to absolutely blowing the doors off everyone here in Dublin. That was with a 25-second last lap. And, the guys out there on the circuit, like some of the best guys in Europe, that's the kind of finishing speed they're closing with. Now, they'd probably be doing it normally off a faster pace, the likes of Jakob Ingebrigtsen. So obviously there's a bit to go yet. But to have shown that is the kind of race Darragh will be looking at towards the European indoors. Will be that kind of, I think he ran around 750. So it's like most of those heats and even the final tend to be won in times like that, but with an absolutely blistering last lap. So I think he set himself up perfectly with that run.
What you put that quick turnaround down to, like you said, over in Boston, he probably wasn't happy with his final laps in both races, but then he put in a 25-second last lap last Saturday. How was there such a quick turnaround? And what was the difference? Was it because the race in Dublin was that bit slower, or
I think it could even be, psychological in terms of because Darragh was the top dog at that level at the national indoors, and he has been now for some time. Like we saw it last year, and he was the best athlete in that race. But I suppose what happened in Boston was he wasn't the best athlete in the race. He was probably the sixth. Those were world class fields. He was the sixth, seventh, eighth best athlete maybe. And I think it can just maybe, it gets to any athlete at times when, you're going all out, but then there's someone in front of you and you're seeing them pull away from you. And I think that can maybe get inside your head a bit. Now, that's probably coupled with the fact he probably was also fading a bit and maybe was a little bit too ambitious, in the third, fourth kilometer, maybe in Boston, things like that. And I think, but I think what was shown by his ambition there was that he is in great form and his training is going very well. And perhaps he just wanted to pop that really big time. And that, I think, was the reason he went to Boston for those races. But it kind of backfired a little bit on him because I suppose he was so ambitious. If he'd been a little less ambitious, he might have actually run quicker. But he went for it, and I suppose you can't fault his attitude in that department. But then coming back to Ireland, I suppose it was like, I am the top dog again. And all he needed to do was sit there and again blow the doors off everyone. But the speed he shows, if he can transfer that same racing mentality to the European level, you'd expect to see him go very well again and be up there. I suppose the way he was for so much of that European 5,000 meters race last year. I know the last 300 it fell to pieces, but he went 95% of the way in that race as one of the top 6, top 8 guys in Europe.
what's a realistic target for him heading to the European indoors?
Well, he's ranked. It's so difficult to kind of make an impact at this level because there's so many guys who basically are the same as Darragh. They're 740 something for 3,000 meters. He's ranked 19th currently in the quota, and 24 athletes get in. So I think making a final, basically, if Darragh can get into a European final, that would be huge. I think if he can just navigate those heats, it will be difficult, but he is exactly the kind of athlete, if he gets it right on the day, who's able to do that because, like we said, he has that finishing speed. And usually with these heats at European level, they don't tend to be, running like 740 or a really fast time. It tends to be like 7:55, 8 minutes, but with a blazing last kilometer. And I think Darragh probably got a bit found out at times, like at the World Indoors last year, and a bit shocked by just how quick all those guys on the circuit can close. But this time, I think the difference is he's not going to be surprised by it. He knows exactly what's coming, and based on yesterday's performance, he looks ready for it.
You alluded to there that Darragh has a lot of races under his belt already this year. One West Cork athlete who doesn't have that many races under her belt is Phil Healy. She made her seasonal debut at the national champs last weekend in the women's 400 metres. I was chatting to her just last week and she was saying she was 6 weeks behind where she wanted to be. So she probably travelled up without the usual expectation last weekend, Cathal, and she won silver behind Sophie Becker. So how would you rate Phil's opening weekend of the year?
This is one where like I think it would be an insult to Phil Healy and the class she has to say it was good. Like it was bad, you know. She won silver, but it was bad. And I think Phil would say it was bad. Her coach Shane McCormick would say it was bad. And I'd say it was bad. Not that my opinion matters. And I think, you know, sometimes athletes can say, how could you say that? You know, she won silver and stuff. But I think to say anything else would be an insult to how good she actually is. Because you have to remember that Phil Healy has run 51.50 outdoors for 400 meters. She's run 51.66 indoors. So she was over 2 seconds off her best indoors, and that time was run last year as well over in Madrid. So like to be that far off it is not a good place to be, assuming she's healthy. And I think that's the reason, you know, we won't be seeing her in the individual 400 out in Istanbul, but we probably will be seeing her in the relay. And it's great that she's actually an athlete who's willing to get on the line, because like you said, she's clearly not herself, whether that was an injury or a training not going well, whatever it was. There's 1,000 different things can cause that for an athlete, and she's working, I think, now as well, which she probably wasn't all of last year. So just that can affect your recovery and things like that. But I think what's great is that she still got on the line. You know, she went to the line, probably knowing it was going to be a hit to her ego, and probably knowing it was like, not that she has an ego, by the way, but like it's to hit to anyone's ego. But that showed great courage, like to get on the line and basically take your beating, but also lay it on the line and try and earn a spot on that relay team for Istanbul, which is what she's done. So I think it's definitely going to be a different indoor season for her. You know, it's just going to be probably going to Istanbul, running a leg of that women's 4x400 meter relay, and then just regrouping and trying to get things right for outdoors. And hopefully we'll see, I suppose, the best version of Phil Healy outdoors, because I think realistically the European indoors are next week. It's too soon to magically turn into like a sub 52 second athlete, which we know she is at her best.
Because she has the qualifying standard from last year for the individual, but like you said there, it's far more likely she'll try and go in the relay.
I think so, because I think only two athletes can go on the 400, and you have Sophie Becker, who obviously beat her convincingly in the national championships, and she has to go up. And then Charlene Maudsley, who ran under 52 seconds there last week, and she ran the 200 meters at nationals. I'm not sure why she didn't run the 400, but I think just based on that, if you're sitting down as the selectors, you'd have to go with Sophie and Charlene as the picks for that, and then Phil hopefully making up a relay spot as well, along with the fourth member.
What are your hopes for Phil heading into the outdoor season?
It's hard to know, you know. I think she's always had that balance between the 200 and the 400, and I think they rolled the dice last year and made that decision not to go to the World Championships in Oregon, focusing on Munich. Now, Ciara McGeehan did the same, focusing on the Commonwealths in Munich, and it paid off for Ciara because, you know, I think she went up against some athletes who were probably slightly struggling with the fatigue and coming down off that peak over in Oregon. And I think for Phil, it just didn't fully work out in Munich, you know, individually, that decision. And maybe she would have been saying, maybe I should have run Oregon. Maybe she doesn't. But I think really, yeah, I think the 400 might be where her future lies for, you know, the rest of her career. And I think especially so given that there's such strength in the relay department, you know, in terms of the women's 4x400, in terms of the mixed relay 4x400. Obviously she was a world finalist, in Oregon last year. So like there's great ability there and potential for, you know, what she can do on a relay team as well towards the Paris Olympics. But I know Phil, you know, ultimately this is an individual sport. She will want to make an impact as an individual, and I've no doubt like she could still, you know, be in an Olympic semi-final for 400 meters next year if she gets it right. But obviously so many stars always have to align for athletes, and it's probably not going as well at the moment as she wants it to be. But, you know, she's got a good coach and she's a very mature, experienced athlete, so I'm sure they'll be able to find the fix in the months and years ahead.
One Healy sister we won't see at European indoors is Joan Healy, who's putting the indoor season to one side now, and she's going focusing on the outdoor season and the 100 meters. But she finished up with a silver medal on Sunday. Sarah Lee, he ran the race of her life to win gold. But assessing where Joan is right now, I know it was a 7:33, a season best. Where would you say that Joan, would she be happy with the silver, or would she be disappointed not to win the gold?
I think maybe if you told her before the race she'd run 7:33, I'm sure she'd have signed on the dotted line because it was a big season's best. And you know, I think she probably would have thought if I run 7:33, I should win gold against this field, because some of the other athletes, you know, who might have run quicker in previous years, like I suppose the likes of Rashida Adelecki or Molly Scott and that, weren't there. So I think she probably would have been surprised that didn't win gold, because, you know, I think the Irish record was 7:30 up until a few years ago. So she's very close to the best marks for a long time by any Irish woman, which is great running. But yeah, I suppose Sarah Leahy just ran, you know, the race of her life to win that gold. So I think Joan maybe probably walking off the finish line might have been a bit disappointed, but I think once she looked at the time, the overall picture and the trajectory, because obviously it was 7:36 in her heat, 7:33 in the final, which is quicker than she'd run. Like I think 7:35 might have been her best before this, so that's a great step forward. I think I was looking at there this morning, she's 46th on the drop down, and I think in the quota system for the Europeans, but I think only top 40 get in, so she would need a few dropouts. I'm not even sure if that is in her plans to go if she did manage to get in the coming days. But yeah, I mean, indoor season, it's always just like the hors d'oeuvres, I suppose, but before the main course of the outdoor season. It's, for a lot of athletes, it is a way of just breaking up the training and giving themselves a bit of motivation before the outdoor season. But I think the best you can hope for really is just to be running fast and then get back into training, take a quick break, get back into training, and you've the foundation laid for a great outdoor season. And looking at where Joan is at right now, that's exactly what she's done.
How do athletes, Cathal, take the speed from the indoor season to the outdoor season? Let's say for Joan, for example, she's going to go from 60 meters to 100 meters. How can she use what she's achieved in the 60 meters and transfer that outdoors to 100?
Yeah, well, I suppose a lot of the stuff, it's kind of ironic, really, that the 60 meters is run indoors, because that's the kind of time of year where athletes typically are just doing the hard slogs. You know, they're running up through the forest, they're running up hills, they're doing a lot of over distance endurance work. And then, but ironically, I suppose once they get on a track and start racing, you know, the 60 meters, it's start position, it's acceleration, it's pickup, and then basically before you even get to, I suppose, the phase where they're trying to maintain their speed, the race is over. So you don't really see the benefits, but I would assume that Joan has done all that work. Every sprinter has. She's clearly in good form, so I'm sure she's done all that kind of endurance work. It sounds kind of ironic to people maybe who, and I don't run the 100, but like to non-sprinters that, you know, but it is from 60 meters to 100 meters, sprinters are slowing down. So that's the part of the race where you do need all that heavy work to kind of maintain your speed as best as possible. But I think the one thing we've seen basically from Joan this indoor season is that her block starts, her acceleration and her pickup, those parts of the races are definitely in great working order if she's running a 7:33. So I think she can look forward to going at that PB for 100 meters on the outdoor season.
Finally, taking West Cork out of the picture for a second, what was your highlight from the national champs the weekend?
Oh, I'd have to say Israel Olatunde was amazing, 6:57. I mean, I think everyone thought eventually he's going to break that 60-meter record, but 6:61 was where it was at by Paul Hessian. And to take 400s off it is a massive chunk in 60-meter terms. It's a whopper of a reduction, like. So, and again, I mean, what was he, 5th in Europe last year, 6th in Europe, and over 100 meters, there's no reason now he can't be thinking European 60-meter final. There's about 25 guys who'll be thinking the exact same thing and believing they can get into it. So it will be difficult. It'd be no surprise if he goes out in the semi-finals over in Istanbul. But it's just brilliant alongside Rashida Edelecki and so many others like Phil, who was challenging just off a medal at the last European Indoors, to now have a guy going over there. And, you know, like realistically, it would probably take something in around 650 to win a medal, which is another long way down to get to really be hunting the medals over there. But to think we might have another Irish sprinter in a European final would be very exciting for everyone to get on board with next week.
This is an incredible time for Irish sprinting. Like you mentioned there, Rashida Edelecki, what she's doing is just off the charts altogether. What Israel Olatunde did last weekend, it's like it's this golden generation coming through.
It really is. It's amazing, like, you know, and I think every time, even as someone who writes about the sport, and Rashida Edelecki, given she ran like 50 races last year, you're just on watch every weekend. Is Rashida running somewhere over in Texas or Albuquerque? Where is she running? Because every time she steps on the track for the next 6 months, it's going to be like possible national record, possible leading European time. And she is tracking towards, you know, being, it's no exaggeration, being a candidate for an Olympic medal in Paris 2024 if everything goes well for her over the next 18 months. That's not unrealistic given the way she's already running right now. And certainly like a finalist at global level, perhaps this year in Budapest and in Paris, like that. Those are both realistic. So yeah, it's brilliant to see. And then even on the distance side, you have a guy like Nick Griggs, the young 18-year-old star coming through. So yeah, I think lots and lots to look forward to in Irish athletics.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for your time, Cathal.
Very welcome. Thank you.